we bring you another very interesting Tech Pathshala on data intelligence. And to do the honors, I would like to welcome Srividya Ram, Vice President Projects and Application Services at Entity Data Services, to present a key insight on data intelligence. Srividya has an industry experience of more than 25 years, has been with the Entity Data since 2000. She is a certified black belt, in Six Sigma, and played a key role in establishing a women network across the Entity Data India. Let's all welcome Srividya Ram, and let's hear how intelligent data enables the digital transformation and why data is a high value asset. Over to you, Srividya.
Thank you, Sandeep. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the session, Data Intelligence. Quick contest test setting. I think, we have an hour, so probably, we will dwell into the topic for 40-45 minutes, and then we will do a Q&A. In parallel, the questions you can post on the chat box. Let me set a quick backdrop here, right? If you look at it today, take the vision of all industries. What is the one single technology vision? It is probably digital. You call it digital transformation, digitization, whatever you want to call it, right? But that is one single thing. Think digital. That's kind of across all the industries. And to realize this vision, the key need is the right talent, and the right talent in emerging technology. That's what NASSCOM is currently doing. So what they're doing is they are trying to understand, what are the industry expectations? Do we have the right talent? How do we connect them? And in that process, they are inviting industry leaders like Entity Data, asking us to talk about, what's happening in the industry when it comes to technology. So the expected outcome of this session for me, because digital data intelligence is a very, very vast subject. 1 hour is not enough. All of us know that, right? But for me, from this session, if I have to talk about one single outcome, which I will consider as making the session excellent, is if each of you listening into this, the students and the early professionals, listening into the session, go back with much more curiosity about data intelligence, then I will think, the session is a good session. Moving on to what I'm going to cover, the next slide. You can go to the agenda slide. Thank you. So moving on, this is what I'm planning to kind of cover. Why data intelligence, right? Why is it relevant currently? And what exactly is data intelligence? Because there are lots and lots of definitions of what data intelligence is. And then, what are the current trends? What is industry seeing when it comes to data intelligence? And the business use cases, a couple of very interesting use cases, which I'm very proud of. And you can see that. And a short note to the students and early professionals. That's what we are going to kind of cover in this. To start with, why data intelligence? I'm sure, all of you have heard about the industrial revolution, right? When I will start with that backdrop, I'm sure, you all know we are in the 4th industrial revolution. If you look at it, the next slide, please. If you look at it, the industrial revolution started early on with the steam engine. I'm sure, most of you are millennials in this, and probably the closest you would have seen a steam engine is the Hogwarts Express, if you're a Harry Potter fan, right? So in 1780, the first industrial revolution, it's more about steam engines and whatnot. That is where the water power, the mechanization, all that happened. The second industrial revolution got onto assembly line, electricity, and things like that. And the third industrial revolution, it came into electronics, right? Probably we all started using what the radio is, what those small things, the car had its own digital cockpit and things like that. But it was more in terms of IT systems and computing. But the fourth industrial revolution, which we are currently in, is where the focus is on the customer experience, how it is getting transformed, artificial intelligence, robotics, IoT, all that. We are all experiencing changes in our daily lives. We are shopping using voice commands. We are just calling Alexa, order this. We are doing gestures to make things happen. It's like a magic. Autonomous cars, and of course our smart device phones, tablets, which keeps us connected always and on. So we are experiencing a whole new way of living. If you go to the next slide, please. Yeah. So this is what we are in, the digital phase, where we talk about all kinds of technologies. And if you notice something in this timeline, right, the industrial revolution timeline, it's also kind of moving very fast. When I say very fast, it's like, I was reading a comparison between Elon Musk and Buffett, how they kind of got their wealth. What it took for Warren to build his wealth over so many years, Elon could do it in just a few years. That is the thing we are seeing here. It's like, we are sitting on a time machine and it is moving so fast. So the fourth revolution which is happening is extremely fast. What we didn't have in the last 10 years, there are so many things, we are getting in the last 10 years. So, it's kind of very fast, the one, probably you can read more and more about the fourth industrial revolution. I probably wanted to share a couple of books by Klaus Schwab, if you are interested to read more. The next slide has the book's name, The Fourth Industrial Revolution by Klaus Schwab, Shaping the Future of Fourth Industrial Revolution, right? So this is more like, if you want to learn more. But coming back, that we are in the digital era now, what exactly is digital? We all have heard, lot of different types of definitions. It's sometimes very confusing, right? So when the researchers in the R&D lab at Japan sat together, they came with a very, very simple definition of what digital is. When you take a business, what does a business do? A successful business, what do? They create value. That is what successful businesses do, right? So digital is about creating new forms of value using data, algorithms, automation, and networks. This is a very, very simple definition. You will see it in the next slide. If you look at it, it's a combination of data, algorithms, automation, and networks, right? That is what it is. And with this, we are delivering value. Businesses are delivering value. The next slide, please. So this is a simple definition you will ever see. But when industries want to go digital, there are multiple drivers, because we have a lot of legacy industries. Take a bank, take the investment bank. They have been there for hundreds of years, and they have a lot of existing systems. What will drive them to move to digital? That is something very interesting. If you look at the next slide, we are talking about the drivers, right? The optimization. If you look at it, basically when I talk about optimization in the next slide, we have business processes which gets optimized. Basically, it is something like, lesser turnaround, lesser resources. It's more economical. It's more with less. That's what we call optimization. So optimization is one of the important drivers. Integration. Today everything is integrated, right? The supplier, the partner, the customer ecosystem. Take the example of Amazon. What happens? They just got everything on their home, especially in the last 1.5 years when we were all stuck at home. Everything was getting delivered at home. They were very beautifully having a platform, which kind of integrates the suppliers, partners, the customers, everything gets kind of an excellent ecosystem. And the experience, customer experience, there is a reinvention of what a customer feels, especially sports. Look at IPL, I mean, the spectators, the players, the organizers, the advertisers, everyone is very nicely getting, kind of integrated. And the experience, what we get out of it is very, very different. Then comes the business models, right? Take the Uber, Oyo, the Airbnbs, it just disrupted the entire business models of how travel works, how the hotel industry is working, so that's a disruption of the business model. And not the least, but the last is about the digital products and services, right? We see huge number of products and services. Take the recent Paytm IPO, which kind of was a big talk in the last week. It made a disruption of how we are paying, how even the small businesses, right? The social media, today I really don't have to talk to the millennials about social media, but that's a whole set of services there. But all this, when we look at all of these drivers, they come with the outcome, right? Either it's a greater efficiency and scale, improved competitiveness. There are new sources of revenue sometimes, and enhanced client value, and of course, increased agility. So all this, when we are looking at all these outcomes and this digital transformation, it requires multiple digital technologies. We realize the full potential of digitization if they know what are the right technologies to be applied. And here comes the complexity now, right? I'm sure all of us have heard the loads and loads of emerging technologies which are essential for digitization. I mean, the number of jargons out there is mind-boggling. So how do we make it simple? Yes, that's what we are talking in the next slide. Probably you can get to the next slide, which yes, these are the 6 digital focus areas we are talking about. Basically, this is just categories of technologies which are essential to digitization, so that it makes it easier, right? You don't have to remember the whole lot of things. The red one marks data and intelligence, which we are going to cover today. Then the intelligent automation, which is the yellow palette there, and the customer experience, Internet of Things, which is in the green palette, and the IP optimization, and last but not the least, the cybersecurity. These are the 6 categories of technologies which are essential to digitization, right? And if you look at, the representative technologies in this, it has a whole lot, to name a few: artificial intelligence, deep machine learning, data curation, robotic process automation, robotics, digital design, sales process automation. We have, when it comes to IoTs, RFID, low power networks. Then when it comes to security, there is a whole lot of things, cyber security. And you talk about blockchain. We just had a session on blockchain, real-time risk monitoring, threat remediation. There's a whole lot of technologies we can talk about, but we are kind of, consolidating it and then telling, these are the 6 categories of technologies which are essential to digitization. And here comes the next one, what we are going to cover today, the digital focus area. So just to simply put, the definition is there. You can kind of, it talks about data, information, knowledge, and how do we get measurable business value. It's very critical. Business value comes only when we are able to measure it. So artificial intelligence, including deep learning and machine learning software, data curation, I talked about, advanced search technologies, predictive analytics, business intelligence or business analytic platforms, that's a whole lot of things. But why data is so important, why it is the first one in the focus area. For that, let me probably get into the next slide, which talks about what is data, where we are getting the data, right? We are in between this huge revolution of data transformation or the digital transformation, right? And our life is changing. Our planet has become so different in the last 10 years. Be it digital payments, social media, GPS. Every person who is living today has got some impact in their life because of this digital transformation. And at the core of the digital transformation is data, right? It's even very difficult to find out, how much data gets produced every day. I believe with even a couple of years back, it was around 2.5 quintillion bytes, which means, some 2.5 followed by 18 or 19 zeros there, right? That's everything from the data which is collected from the Land Rover on Mars till the Instagram picture you posted this morning, so that's a lot of data. Look at it, internet. Today, most of the searches happen in Google, right? And I believe, there are billions of searches happen on a daily basis on these things. Look at the amount of data internet creates. Then comes social media. We really don't have to talk about it. Instagram active users, take it, it's more than 1 billion in a month, right? And the active users on a day itself is around 500 million is what they talk about. LinkedIn, which is supposed to be a very professional network, there are 772 million users worldwide. That's a big number. Look at the number of data we are creating. Then comes communication. Yes, the chat messages, WhatsApp, the mails. Of course, I heard that there are 1.8 billion Gmail accounts worldwide. Just one part of it. Then we have a lot of other things. Digital photos. There's no end to it. Everyone takes selfies all the time and then post it. So digital photos is the other one. Then comes the services. Very, very interesting statistics. If you look at it, Uber provides 15 million rides per day across the globe. That's not a small number. Look at the amount of services you got to call, you got to book, the data gets transferred. Imagine the number of data which gets transferred. Food orders, right? Swiggy, Zomato, then the online music, Spotify or your Amazon Prime, look at the amount of data, which goes over that. And then finally, the Internet of Things, right? Smart devices, which interconnect and interact with each other. All kinds of data is exploding and is one of the primary drivers for our data vaults exploding as well. So Juniper Research said, in 2021, IoT devices have reached billions and billions. This is almost 200% increase from 2016, which is just 4-5 years. So you can imagine, that data is the core of this transformation. If you can get to the next slide, we create huge data on a daily basis. Data is the new oil, I'm sure we all have heard, and data is the core of digital revolution. And industry has clearly understood that, the criticality data in achieving the desired business outcomes. IT services companies like NTT Data are working to ensure that client needs are met. There is a small video here, if you can play the video, which talks about data.
Data is the new currency that drives a smart world. Data that delivers public safety to cities and their citizens. Data that delivers supply chain optimization to global manufacturers and their customers. Data that delivers intelligent traffic management to transportation agencies. Data that delivers improved quality of life for healthcare providers and their patients. Data that delivers information that becomes knowledge, leveraging a smart application platform. Today's public and private businesses are challenged with gaining insights from the explosion of data from IoT devices and sensors. With NTT's Smart Application Platform, IT and business executives will begin to break down and converge data silos and enable the collection and categorization of industry-specific IoT data with advanced analytic models that flow from devices and sensors at the IoT edge, through data accumulation and abstraction, to cross-industry applications and collaboration, delivering targeted, smart insights and actions. With the Smart Application Platform, public and private organizations will be able to collect and analyze data from IoT devices, enterprise systems, and commodity-grade third-party data sources to deliver not just rich, tailored data, but true information across the entire value chain. Information that will enable the development of smart applications that alert, analyze, predict, learn, and improve. Applications that drive insight and actions that continuously manage and optimize the IoT edge and technical infrastructure. Applications that empower true business knowledge. And NTT's Federation of world-class partners will be there, providing services and support for enabling intelligent business decisions. NTT is accelerating smart and enabling a smarter world.
So that's why data is important. And what is data intelligence? If you could go to the next slide. We just heard about it, right? The precise intention of data intelligence is to convert the dormant, enormous data, right? The data is like huge, but it has to convey some meaning, and so that it becomes information and then into intelligence. So when you see across various domains, large organizations, they are reinventing their business model by turning this data into intelligence, right? And using integration, automation, and AI-led technology to see, what are the true business outcomes coming out of it. So data intelligence is a practice of using artificial intelligence and machine learning tools to analyze and transform massive data sets into intelligent data insights, which can then be used to improve services. The application of data intelligence tools and techniques can help decision makers develop a better understanding of collected information with the goal of developing better business processes. So across various industry domains, this is what is happening, right? When you look at what exactly is happening in terms of data intelligence, they are harnessing the data to reinvent the business model. If you get to the next slide, please. Yeah. Data as a high value asset gives you actionable insights. That's equally important. There has to be some action coming out of all this. So if you look at, most of the IT services company, they have their own platforms, and the solutions which helps. How do we do the data and analytics solutions, and then how do we get the end-to-end complete capability? This is more like, data intelligence as a service, and it enables most of the organization to succeed with business intelligence, big data, fast data, predictive analytics, machine learning, and whatnot. They're all well integrated. That's something, which happens. But just quickly, if I have to talk about digital data intelligence components in a simple flow, if you could go to the next slide. Yeah, I covered it. You can go to the next one, please. The next one. Yep. Okay. So this is a simple flow chart, right? Data source. I'm sure, we all know the structured, unstructured data sources can be very, very different. It comes from social media, IoT, data source. It can be a simple spreadsheet, whatnot, and all our databases, SQL, Oracle, across multiple applications, right? So the data sources is the first place, and then the data onboarding. How do we do ETL? I'm sure, extract, transform, load, data ingestion, data virtualization, the whole load of things. And then, how do we create the data ecosystem? Right? This means huge amount of data, too complex and disorganized, and how do we make it more useful? There is the pure data noise which has to be knocked off, and then you create these data lake, the whole lot of things, right? Then comes the discovery stage, the analytical modes, discover powerful trends, insights, even predictive analytics, right? They target accurate prediction. So that's where it ends, analytics, traditional BI, self-service. Finally, we look at machine learning and data service. This is by and large at a very high level. This is how things move. I will kind of, take a breather, here and kind of recap what we covered so far. We spoke about what is the globe going through, the digital transformation, and data is the core, and data intelligence, what it means, because we have huge amount of data, which means along with that, a lot of noise comes in. So data intelligence is something, which kind of extracts the required information and makes it into intelligence, which the industry and the businesses are harnessing to make sure, they are delivering the right value. So that's what we covered now, why it is important and what it means. So let's just move on to see some of the industry trends today, what's happening across the industry and when it comes to data intelligence, because it's an exponential change. If you go to the next slide, we have to keep pace with this exponential change because, evolving nature of data with advent of advancing technology, higher consumer expectations of personalization and service excellence. I mean, today, people don't shy away in sharing their personal data, and then people kind of move on across multiple apps. If you look at it, right, that's a very good example. Whichever is more personalized, take Spotify, right? I keep listening into the jazz. It keeps pushing out personalized set of playlists for me, right? So, people want that personalization. Business model disruption with specified vertical specific solutions, a lot of vertical specific solutions. So industry has to keep pace with this kind of change which is happening. So we did a market research. This is just when COVID was hitting us, right? 2020, in partnership with Longitude, a Financial Times company, we conducted 2 online surveys across 500 executives in total, right? The respondents were senior level managers and based in US and Canada. The first survey was conducted in January of 2020, and the second one in March. If I look at the verticals, I think it was split across 88% between banking, insurance, manufacturing, and healthcare industries. And then, because there is also public sector, right, the state and federal, the remaining 12% falling into the other category, right? So what did we find then? Most of the organizations, appreciate, understand data is an asset. But we are still wrestling, right? How to make the organizations data-driven. So organizations have survived still, and have decade-old challenges, data silos. There are still a lot of mainframes running around, and there are a lot of individual apps and various different platforms, different architectures, different technologies, So that brings in another complexity. Data quality is another challenge, right? A lot of noise data. And strong data governance, we all understand that strong data governance gives structure to process during uncertain times, right? And while people value and understand what it is, they were still struggling on 2 things, right? How to organize data effectively effectively. When I say, how to organize data effectively, architectures were very cumbersome and inflexible. Duplication of processes, right? Even today, we see that in many of the organizations, there is a duplicate of processes, and also, just a source of truth. There are multiple databases, which one is my source of truth? Then the inefficient existing tools and processes to handle this big data, right? They really don't have that kind of tools, and quality of data. So that organization of data is a first challenge. The second one becomes, how do we extract insights from this data? Yes, I have made sure the data is efficient. I have a single source of truth. I know how to handle this huge data, how to get the right data involved. Then, once you have a good data, how do I extract the insights from the data? What are the challenges there? Analytical capabilities, right? What happens by and large, the analytical capabilities get kind of built from technology rather than building from the business needs. Normally, analysis has to go with the business needs, so that was one gap we saw. And the Big Bang approach, monolithic solutions, instead of being agile and iterative, people just went for the one big solution, which kind of was a monolithic problem. Then consider this analytics is considered as a one-off project, right? They do analysis, they build a nice dashboard, and then they think, okay, it's all done. It's not how it works, right? And how do we do the integration with all the other external systems? So these were, major things which we were discussing at that time. And then the COVID-19 happens. If you look at the next slide, these are some of those headlines which happened at that time, right? And that is when data intelligence became extremely, extremely critical. I'm sure we all experienced, if you had been in India and if you followed how the government dashboards were happening on the government side, be it the Arogya Setu app, which came in where, all the vaccination schedule and everything was managed, people understood, data intelligence is extremely important in managing a pandemic, right? And a lot of business houses, including the IT services company, had to transform overnight, right? We kind of had to go there, change within, without even realizing, what is hitting or how long it is going to be. We all went through a huge, huge transformation, right? And you see it, COVID-19 is kind of one of the best phase also, I would call, when it comes to technology. Because, whatever we thought is going to take more years, it all happened overnight for us, Take a simple case of large investment bank, for whom we are delivering services from India. It was always mandatory. The employees were working from a secure environment in the office premises. That was like a mandatory requirement because of the risk and regulatory needs which an investment bank in the US has. And here comes COVID-19, and overnight, we got to figure out a way, how do we get people work remotely, but at the same time, make sure there is security. So cybersecurity became a very, very critical thing. If you remember, we saw that as one of the digital focus areas, one of the 6 categories we talked about, right? So when COVID-19 happened, industry kind of picked up, I would say. There are a lot of good things happen. Yes, we don't want a pandemic to trigger those things, but yes, we saw a huge, huge revolution, huge acceleration of this digital transformation. And also those large organizations who were kind of, looking at all this digital transformation as one of those things, it became like the core important focus area, the core vision for the company. So that is something, which happened. So the value of data intelligence increased tremendously over COVID, right? We saw a lot of things happening, and even today, if you see the Indian industry and the Indian market, the need for all the digital technologies, the need for the right talent, all that was triggered because of what we are seeing today. The demand has increased tremendously for all the intelligence when it comes to data. So when we looked at the organizations or the businesses, we kind of categorized them into 5 different buckets. If you could go to the next slide, please. Yeah. So this is how you can see we just are calling something as the disruptors who have completely understood data is core. Data is viewed as transformative and it is central to the business strategy. It is only less than 5% who are able to get to the next gen architecture, analytics, AI. It's still not a big number, but they are disrupting, right? Come to a data differentiator, quite a few there, 10 to 20% data considered as a strategic asset. They know, hybrid data architectures. They still are doing some prescriptive, some predictive analytics with a combination of the lot. And there is another set of businesses, right? Where they know, data is a key tool, advanced enterprise-wide descriptive analytics with some predictive analytics. So there are some modern cost-effective architectures, but yet, they still are not fully in their performance. They still have to come a long way. Then the data monitors, they are still enabling. They still have some aging data architects, some largely legacy, and they're still not optimized. We see some of those large organizations who have been there for years, are still struggling in this gap. And then finally, less than 10%, they have still not utilized the data well. This is more like, what we saw across, and this is how the industry is today. But if you look at the scene in India, specifically, when it comes to Bangalore, I'm sure you all are tracking the startup scene. And if you pick up 100 startups, you will see at least 60 to 80% of them are based on data and how they are able to intelligently, analyze and extract information, which brings in that differentiation for them as a startup, right? So understanding data, extracting and using it for business outcome, that's something, we are seeing growing up in pockets, especially the technology capitals across the world. Obviously, we are one, I'm proud to say that, and we definitely do much better, but it is a catching up trend. So I'm sure the next couple of years things are going to change in this percentage. So this is what happens in industry today. But when it comes to data intelligence, I also wanted to share few things, right? Which happens, a very interesting use cases at different industry verticals. Some of the couple of videos also I wanted to share, which kind of are self-explanatory. But before that, let's quickly run through few business use cases. If you could go to the next slide, please. Yeah. So I'm sure, data intelligence is across. You take the finance domain. This prediction is extremely critical. And obviously the prediction analytics, what we are talking about, that's one of the big area, where data intelligence comes into play. A lot of large banks, a lot of investment banks across the globe use data intelligence techniques, and they are very ahead on the game because, risk prediction is extremely critical for them. Of course, ROI calculation, another area, which is of big importance to the finance sector. Take the insurance part, again, there is a lot of things, which happens utilizing the data intelligence technologies. Social media, I really don't have to even talk about it. Most of us understand what is happening. Sentiment analysis is one simple thing, right? In fact, most of the companies, including NTT Data, have got their own sentiment analysis platforms. Basically, this looks at what are the sentiments about a product or service across the customers, right? So how do you get these inputs? There is huge data out there on the social media, right? People tweet about it, people post it on Instagram, people do stories on Instagram, people talk about it in Facebook, So all the inputs are collected, analyzed for sentiments. I still remember a word cloud, when NTT was implementing in the state of Victoria, Australia, their entire transportation chain, we were watching how it all is going to get a feedback. So when we did a sentiment analysis and presented it to the government of Victoria, they were extremely happy, because today we know, when there is a cricket match happening in Australia, we know the trains are going to be crowded and the bookings are going to be too fast. What are the commuters tweeting about, the entire system? We could see that, that's something which data intelligence can make happen for us. Digital marketing channel choice, which is the best digital marketing choice. Those are the things, which most of the social media, the advertisers, they keep looking at. Marketing, yes, cross-selling, upselling, that's something, which happens. It also helps in large organizations, right? When a bank knows you are a customer who has excellent records in terms of your credit records, they definitely want to sell more to you. They are going to talk to you about a new credit card. They are going to talk to you about a insurance plan which they have, and multiple things, right? So they are going to cross-sell and upsell. How do they get those intelligence? Yes, they are running through all the data, they are running through all the transactions we are making, and that becomes again a data intelligence part. Travel, dynamic pricing, we all know today when we want to book a ticket, what happens when we book, how do we do it? The browser is a factor, the time of the day is a factor, multiple different things is a factor. So even booking Uber, or Ola, I saw, when you use a Apple phone and book, and when you use an Android device and book, there is a difference in pricing. That's the kind of data intelligence which plays out in dynamic pricing. Flight schedule prediction, a very important thing. Last but not the least, very huge changes happening in healthcare, right? Amazing changes. Disease prediction, medicine effectiveness, those are a few things, but then we all experienced it, right? Telemedicine, that kind of blew up during the pandemic, right? The amount of telemedicine, the amount of data intelligence which went into making sure, all those systems were happening, all those dashboards at every state level, government level about the pandemic situation. I mean, the amount of healthcare outcomes which we got through data intelligence was amazing, right? So these are the few set of use cases. We will see, where data intelligence is playing a very, very important role. At the same time, I want to talk about two important use cases here, right? I'm sure all of us have heard about Las Vegas for good reasons. Las Vegas outside of Nevada, people immediately think of famous casino line strip, five-star resorts, and of course it attracts 40 million visitors a year. But beyond the neon lights, for Las Vegas residents and businesses, there are around 700,000 citizens inside the city limits and another 1.8 million living in nearby municipalities, right? So it is a thriving metropolis, and it is probably the US second fastest growing city. And the city expects to add another million residents by 2045. So urban planning, digitization, all that dominates the city agenda. If you could go to the next slide, please. So according to Mike Sherwood, who is the Director of Technology and Innovation for the City of Las Vegas, who's also our client, the combination of tourists who come into Las Vegas and the population growth, make public safety and mobility their top priorities. So for the city of Las Vegas, with all this happening, there is always a constant stream of visitors, and then, you have the growing population for the city itself. So they made public safety as their top priority. And delivering city services became a big challenge for them. So they are really focused on safety of their citizens and visitors and how they get around, right? And it is also extremely important for them to understand how people use our infrastructure and amenities. So it's also about increasing the effectiveness and efficiency of government and access to services. So here is a short video you will see on what happened in city of Las Vegas and how data intelligence played a big role there.
Connected City is really about government working with residents. Over 40 million visitors come into our town every year. We're also one of the fastest growing states in the United States. We believe in the role of a connected community is providing more information to the community.
The infrastructure for smart cities would start with a sensor, and then that sensor would work wirelessly with a car, with a person, with a phone. Then that sensor would be transmitted back to the city's data center.
So we're able to know in real time how our roadways are operating, provide the vehicles information for trip routing.
What we're able to do now is get hour by hour, minute by minute counts of vehicles going through.
It's not just about getting the data back, it's getting the data back when it's useful.
Anytime you have that capability of understanding your roadway, you're able to change outcomes. We're able to do a lost child application.
How they work traditionally, the alert goes out and then people report back in if they see something. We have all this data coming in, and we have these nice dashboards, so now we can see the alerts that are generated by the machine learning and artificial intelligence. We'd be able to find a child much faster, and that time makes a difference.
If we can save a life, that's the true value of what a connected city is. It's about providing technology tools that really work towards increasing the effectiveness and the efficiency of government. One of the key aspects of having a smart and connected city is the data we collect from our sensors.
I think the challenge is just the mass of data. One of the beautiful things about the engagement is that we've learned how to design the infrastructure to optimize that.
Having data is like having oil. When you refine it, the value goes up. And we really tell data stories.
The true transformative nature of smart cities is when we are able to cross-collaborate.
Working with NTT and Dell has really brought the best players onto our team. We work cohesively.
I think one of the most elegant things about the solution we came up with NTT and Dell is that we can manage the resources on the edge.
Being able to be proactive rather than reactive.
We're at that point where the cities that invest, the cities that learn, the cities that understand the technology will be the cities of the future. And that's really what we're looking at being, is Las Vegas being a leader in innovation and technology, and really leveraging our partnership with NTT to make those dreams not only a reality, but show them practically that it can be done.
Thank you. So that's one of the use cases. There is one more, which is probably very close to me, because it is about women's sports. I'm sure they have announced a women's Tour de France next year, and we are the official technology partner. So when women get the first chance to compete. And when we track, what are the data which comes out, it's pretty interesting use case to share here. If you can go to the next video, given that we have few minutes left. It's again a short video.
The Paris-Roubaix it's like you're literally cycling through hell, because it is just so tough and the cobbles are so intense. The women's Paris-Roubaix is really, groundbreaking for women's cycling because, for so many years, it's always been thought of as being too tough. It's a man's race because it's so hard. To finally have the opportunity as women, it feels like women's cycling is being taken seriously and that we're given sort of the credit that we deserve. The fact is we're strong and we're talented athletes. Having our data visible to the general public, it gives a lot of credibility when people are able to see the numbers that we can push. Entities' involvement in broadcasting and cycling in general, in terms of bringing technology to the forefront of the viewer experience, I think that's very important for the progress of the sport and for the sport to be moving with the times. To be the first winner of the Paris-Roubaix, would be a historical moment.
Thank you. So that kind of brings us to the last part, short notes to what it means to the students and the early professionals. If you can go to the next slide. I'm sure most of you know this. It is one of the high-paid job roles in this data domain. And recent industry studies talk about almost in India, it's kind of median 12 lakh per annum. That kind of explains, why it is very important for us to talk to the talent here. Data will be the future, right? And it's huge, and this is a core. Right, every company will be a data company in the future, right? There are a lot of opportunities for individuals to play multiple roles, from data architect to application architect to enterprise architect, data scientist, data analyst, data engineer, statistician. It can be multiple different roles. It's a bit confusing to pick up, what you want to be, right? Because it's a multidisciplinary field, and it involves skills, statistics, probability, machine learning, software engineering. It's a combination of these also result in different titles, right? Something like a infrastructure architect, that's a supporting role. But there are three core roles if you look at it, right? The data analyst. That's one who helps in analyzing, summarizing data using basic statistics, SQL, Python, very, very common role, and most companies hire for this role. The second is the data scientist, right? The deeper knowledge, work with more scientific rigor. They probably focus on something like a fraud detection using statistics, programming languages, machine learning, and all that. But they probably are not into software engineering, but machine learning engineer has good software engineering experience so that he can integrate projects. Then, the data scientist and analyst are hired more by IT services and product companies, and machine learning or also hired by product companies. So that's where it kind of helps. For me, this is a quick one. If you go to the next slide, right, these are the focus areas I would probably share based on what we have seen, right? Obviously, if you're still in college, academics, the college credits and college projects, even if you're majoring in a different area, try to take up some minor and key digital subjects. Most of the colleges today allow it. Whomever we are working with, we see, they are working on Python, Tableau. They allow them to take those small courses, data mining, predictive modeling, and all that. So academics is one important thing. Certifications, obviously, it helps in additional knowledge. There are lots available online also, from something starting from Coursera, even our own IITs have a lot of online classes, Stanford, and they are at affordable cost. It's not too expensive today. Advanced analytics, image recognition, augmented reality, whole lot, right? That goes in. Internship helps because it gives you a lot of things. And lastly, the industry awareness. When I say industry awareness, read about white papers, the technology foresight. If you see in the next slide, I have put a couple of them. These are something we publish. This helps to understand. So between academic, what you study, your external certifications, if you do an internship, and also improve your industry awareness, I think that helps overall. So that brings us to the end of the session. I know Sandeep is waving seriously there. Yeah, Sandeep, here we are.
Thank you, Shivya. I think we have a couple of questions which I would like to,
Sure.
One is the importance of protection.
Sorry, Sandeep, you're a bit breaking. If you can repeat the question.
Audible now?
Yeah, you are, but it's like breaking.
Can you throw some light on the GDPR, the data protection?
Data
all about data, right?
Right. So that's something very, very critical. I think it came up a few years back. It again is a distraction, right? When we are looking at data, and a lot of businesses are based on data, right? Data analysis is something which happens. But today, let's take for example, right? We get millions of calls, right? How do our phone number goes to someone? For example, you try looking at some ad on your phone, and then you get all those messages about you want to buy this car. These are the set of cars. You open your Gmail, the car ad pops up. You keep getting mails. How does it happen? Obviously, there is something where the data is getting extracted, it is getting analyzed, and it is getting shared, right? And there are a lot of personal data also, which get shared by the way, right? And when it became extremely critical, that is where the GDPR rules came in, where they said personally identifiable data, which we call it as PID. It is something which can never be shared. So most of the large organizations have put it in place, the processes, and obviously there are a lot of tools. So when I look at the data, and when I analyze the data, when I want to go back and ask, what is the diversity percentage in the team I have, it's a simple question, but I can't have the data because that's GDPR today, right? So that is again another place where data intelligence plays a very important part, right? People have to look at data, analyze it. It's just not noise, right? We have to kind of camouflage the data, which we cannot share, and then only give you what the data which the business is asking, so that they make the right decision. So from the GDPR perspective, again, there were a lot of projects we have been doing just to make sure, GDPR is implemented and also the business is happening at the same time.
Very nice. I think I have one more question. I just would like to ask that. Just something which is deep question. Like, what are typical challenges in the area of the data cleansing to the analytics part of it?
In the area of data analytics, you said?
Data cleansing.
Data cleansing. That's huge, I would say, right? So if you remember, right, when we spoke about what are the different buckets we are putting the businesses in different states, one critical thing, right, is to pick up the right data. So data cleansing, that is where, the data analyst part, they may not be someone, whom we are looking at in terms of programming or others, but someone who understands how to handle the data, how to curate the data, and how are we going to make sure the noise is knocked up. So it is a combination of things. Number one, what is data cleansing, right? What the data which is important to me may not be useful to someone else. So data cleansing also means someone understands what is the business need, what is my focus when I'm looking at the data, then kind of, making sure there are the right algorithms in place so that the data cleansing happens and we remove off what is noise. So data cleansing is not only the technology requirement of how do we use and clean the data, it is also understanding what is the business need, and it is a combination of both. And data cleansing becomes the most critical thing when we are making very big decisions based on data. For example, take a supply chain business, right? Which part of the market we are going to focus on, which part of the market we are going to drop or diverse from, that's a big decision for any big business, right? Which is the market you want to focus on. And if you are going to make those decisions based on a bad data, it's not going to help. So, data cleansing is a very, very important thing. That's why we keep telling, every company is going to become a data company in the coming days, and data is going to be the core. So all this are going to play a large role, and there are a lot of scope for all the early professionals and students in data intelligence area.
Wonderful, Srividya. I think, as you rightly said, the data is the new currency. And thank you very much. The session beautifully covered, why intelligent data is the strategic asset, and how do companies harvest or the data is harvested to invest in the reinvent in the business model. Very interesting case studies, use cases. And the last one, the very valuable note to the academic or the students on the need for the skilling in this domain and the demand in the market. Yeah, thank you very much for this very interesting session.
And thanks NASCOM for this. This is a great initiative, and thanks viewers, and thank you, Sandeep.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day.
Thank you. Thank you.